All right.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning to our trainer, Vicky, and thank you all for joining us today. The Home Buyer Readiness Committee, we planned a lot of milestones, and this is one of the series that we plan today, and it's the virtual training training for virtual platforms, and our host today would be Marie Bonneville. And so I just want to read off Marie's bio here, and then we could go ahead and get started. And also just want to thank Fannie Mae for sponsoring our webinar series that we're having. So thank you so much. So Marie Bonneville proudly began her professional career with the Seminole Tribe of Florida and has since provided tribal housing and education trainings nationwide. Former positions include higher education recruiter, adult vocational administrator, professional development manager, a program manager, director of training and technical assistance for Native Learning Center. As owner of Sunlight Homes LLC, she develops training in her areas of homeownership, education, housing compliance, organizational management, and community development. She provides on-site and online training and certified in the following: Pathways Home, a Native homeownership guide, building Native communities, financial skills for family through First Nations OESA Corporation, and Enterprise Community Partners, Tribal Leaders Handbook on Homeownership Instructor. Marie has a bachelor's in political science with a minor in international relations and a master's in public administration with a certificate in community development. She is a proud wife, mother of two, and currently resides in Aceworth, Georgia, if I said that right.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So let's give her a good South Dakota welcome.
Thank you. I want to thank Anna and the other chairs of the South Dakota Coalition for Native American Homeownership. I'd also like to thank Vicky and Joanna for this opportunity to really talk to you guys today about the things that I love the most, right? It's the presenting of information for our communities and making sure that we disseminate all the good things that we have to offer within our programs and that we do it effectively, right? So we're going to talk a lot about the best practices. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So if you see me off to the corner, I'm around. I'll be looking in the chat area for you guys as well. So as you're thinking, as you're wanting to communicate with me, this is really a conversation. Put it in the chat area. If I don't catch it, Vicky will as my facilitator. And so she'll help me kind of navigate through these technical waters. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll go ahead and get started. So first you can see I'm already in prep mode. I've got some fun things planned for you guys, but let's get this presentation up. So with presentations, the thing about it is we're going to talk about so many different elements. We're going to talk about, the fact that even though with the pandemic and all the different changes that we've made within our office spaces and where we do our work day to day, the rest of it remains the same. We're going to talk about how you develop your content, right? We're still using those big old books. We still have that information that we need to get and give to our clients. We need to talk about presentation platforms. What kind of connections will our clients have? What type of media? Whether is it going to be a laptop? Are they going to be on their phones? And what does that mean for our content? We're going to talk about being the responsibilities of whether you're a facilitator like Vicky will be today, kind of helping move information forward between the hosts, or are you going to be the presenter and providing the instruction? And what does all that mean? Or what are the responsibilities? And then so we'll talk about tech, because that's usually where everybody wants to hide. I see I don't have a whole lot of video going on with my Brady Bunch screen. I don't see everybody on camera. So we're going to talk about why it's important to be on camera, what it conveys when you're the instructor. I do know that everyone has a lot going on, and so they may not be camera ready for today's presentation, but in the future, how we can all feel comfortable in that space. And then lastly, evaluation and design and redesign. And I say redesign because we're constantly evaluating to become better at what we do. This is now my 14th year kind of just giving out information in different communities. And what it looks like is a lot different from where we started. So I think that that's also helpful to know. So before we get started, I want everyone to go ahead and take just one long, deep breath. I feel like there's this anxiety over just being in a training space. And so real quick, we're just going to take one long deep breath in and one long deep breath out. And we're going to get in a calming place with that, because really, as you take in this information and what will work for you and your communities, it's not meant to be overwhelming. And I'm going to give you a little bit of just humor, because I think that that's what we love so much when we're in our trainings. We have fun. We have fun with our clients. We have fun with our coworkers. You have to make it fun. And so this was a very serious meeting taking place at the 394th District Court of Texas. And if you haven't seen this video, we're going to watch it together, because I think it just goes to show you that we're all navigating these waters. So let's go to the beginning.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to
can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
I can see that. I think if you click the up arrow next to this.
So what was funny about this, I thought, was the fact that he had to declare that he wasn't a cat. So that was number one. And then also too, just how fun it was that, here we're in this professional setting, and tech, you have to be prepared for the absolute worst in his case. So I think that it's just one of those things that we can't take it too serious. If we don't know where our boxes are, ask, hey guys, can you see this? Do you know where, can you see my screen? Obviously you want to be as prepared as humanly possible. But if you don't know where your chat box is, ask someone, right? So with that, we'll get back to the presentation, but I just thought that was neat. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. So what we have to know is that even though presenting may seem like there's going to be this anxiety, it's not a bunch of high level skills. It's just doing a few things really well over and over. So you're not looking for perfection. That's not the answer. We're looking for authenticity. I want to see you, Anna, or Vicky. I want to see the person and the personality that you bring to your trainings. So let me go into present mode. And so, what do we already know? Let's start from what we know. Many of you are providing program services. So you know who your clients are, you know what, where, when these programs or these services take place. And so you're presenting sometimes on the things you already have the information for. You're comfortable there. What about policies and procedures, right? Maybe you're disseminating information to council. And so you're going through what's old, what's new when it comes to a policy or a procedure that might be changing. Maybe you're disseminating that information to your staff, right? And so you want to make sure that you're comfortable with that information as well. Report findings and budgets, right? Maybe there's that needs assessment. I know there was this big, huge one back in 2017 that everyone wanted to take and pull information out of, because we want to find the impact of what we're doing. Maybe you're looking at it from your strategic plan, or you're looking at it from other places where that information may exist. But this is the information you already have to present. It's just a matter of doing it in new and exciting ways. So we're going to talk about that. And what about new ideas? Maybe you guys are brainstorming. And so you have to come together and think of some things that might be better for your community now that you're pivoting to an online platform. So if your program services are kind of saying, okay, how can I do this online? What does this look like for us? This is where that would come from. And then emotional information, right? Prevention, outreach, a call to action. You want to bring, people to the table. You want to let them know about the vaccination opportunities. You want to let them know about things that are going on in their community. Then obviously presenting is the way to do that. So you can't be afraid of it. You have to know that you're the one with that information. It's very valuable. And when you come from that perspective, I feel like the energy is there. Everybody's been to those presentations where, the presenter wasn't feeling it, right? For whatever the reason, they didn't feel comfortable. And so we have to come from that posture. So we know we need to have, everything tailored towards our audience, right? So you have to scrap the one size fits all. And what I mean by that is sometimes when we're in these large trainings and you get the training books, you think that you have to use all the content, all the information, you have to memorize everything. And what you have to know is that not everything applies to everyone and every situation is different. So kind of scrap the one size fits all and look to see where you can be most effective in your delivery. What content matters most to your clients? Of course, you want to identify who's in the room, right? So we, as the facilitators, the co-chairs went ahead and said, okay, here are the people we need to thank. Here's who's in the room. Just like you would on site, if there's counsel in the room that you need to address, or if there's board members, et cetera, those stakeholders, making sure we understand that there's format and there's individuality and that mix. How do we include both? What does that look like for us? All of this matters. So our strategy to impacting your audience has to do with the objectives. Certainly when you read today's objectives, you thought, okay, this is what this training is going to be about. I need to know that this is something I really want more information on, but I need to bring the stories that impact you. I need to bring the content that then will impact you. And then support that with tangible ways you can take it back to your community and make it work. So if I give you objectives, but then I don't give you any stories and any ideas and give you that energy that I need to bring to the table, how am I supporting you as my audience? What support information am I going to give you? That is where I think you have to begin with the end in mind, right? You identify the challenge of the information that you want to provide. You want to quantify, okay, what kind of impact do I want this to have? Maybe I want credit scores to improve. Maybe I want to make sure that they have the right documentation when they go to see their loan officers. What is that impact that you plan to have for the session and for the outcome? Propose your solution. Make sure that that's in your presentation. And sometimes while you're developing, you're going to see that you've kind of gone off course, that something doesn't fit. Sell the advantage to whatever it is you're talking about, and then substantiating your position. What I mean by that is I have a goal. My goal is to make sure that I bring everything I can to the table, and that way I can actually use the chat area and use the areas that you have questions to substantiate why powerful presentations are so important. And so that's exactly what I mean when I say substantiate your position. Now everyone knows my position. So if I go off course, when they go to evaluate me, they'll be able to tell, okay, these are the objectives she had, this is the position she took, and these were the outcomes that resulted. So of course, 80% of what you plan in terms of your content, that's going to be planned, right? There are going to be exercises. There are going to be content that you want to have, maybe a teach back or some other way that we find out whether the client is gaining this information. You're going to have some Q&A in the chat area as well. Separate from that, 20% of your of what you do will be unexpected, right? You don't know. When they sent out the Zoom link, we weren't sure if there were going to be any other stakeholders in the room, key staff member that might be present that want to communicate or talk. What about relevant opportunities, right? If there's an event happening that weekend, do you want to omit it because it's not in your presentation, or do you want to go ahead and mention that? Mention some other things that may come through conversation that you're having in the chat area. And then you always want to leave time for Q&A. And Q&A, I mean, it's just like letting your kids kind of take over the mic. You never know what they're going to say. So you got to give that some grace and have an opportunity there for that. but we have to tackle the anxiety that I think we all get from disseminating content that we didn't create, right? So when you're looking at content like Pathways, like the Building Native Communities curriculum, you have to say to yourself, I know that this isn't new, right? There's nothing new under the sun, but what can I do to make this my own? What feel can I have? What do I know that they need? How can I make this my own? That's the only way you're going to feel comfortable with it. And I say that because oftentimes we're not developing our own slides. I do know that in many of our communities, we have tons of people who are just, they're the creatives, maybe you're just good at for myself, Word and, PowerPoint's not their favorite, but, you have to collaborate with that person so that they're not creating things that you didn't actually get a chance to read. You can kind of tell when someone hasn't created the presentation slides themselves. They feel uncomfortable delivering the content. So the feelings of inadequacy, you have to know and value your message. So what does a successful presentation look like to you, right? What would it look like to know that your staff has the information they need? Kind of project that ahead of time. You have to know and practice your material. There's no way around that. So you want to do that with some accountability partners, right? Bring people to the table and say, hey, I have this presentation. I need to run through it with you, because what makes sense to you doesn't always make sense to others. And so it's really important that you're practicing in front of others to make sure the flow works well. And then lastly, you want to take some breaks, because we get so focused on the content that we forget to take a break, go for a walk, listen to music, change your mood. I think when we took that deep breath, we were saying, okay, I might have shown up to the Zoom late. I might have shown up to the Zoom super early. I might have the phone ringing, but I'm going to take a break. I'm going to calm down, and then I'm going to just be present with the information. Sometimes we have to reevaluate our calendars, right? So, you think you're going to work on your presentation for an hour and then life gets in the way. So reevaluating your calendar, making sure you have the time to really sit and look at the curriculum is important. Avoid social media and also Googling things. Obviously, I just showed you the cat from YouTube. There are times when that's great, that, it's helping you with your creativity, but it also can be taxing or draining because you may feel that not enough. This, if I add this, or I should do this, or maybe I should add a TikTok. And then next thing you know, you've been scrolling for an hour and a half on these other sites, and you're kind of, not being as productive as you need to be. And then asking for that honest evaluation from your accountability partners is super helpful. So before I move forward, I just want to make sure I'm checking the chat area as well. I don't think I see anything in the chat area, but if something pops up or you have a question about anything, I'll just keep doing that periodically. So storytelling, right? This is the area that I think that we should be really looking at all of the content that we're given through these curriculums that are produced, and kind of say, okay, where can I add a story that will be most effective to my audience? And so for me, one of the important things is to know that a story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So as you can see here with this slide, you know exactly what it needs to be, short, to the point, but I'll kind of give you an example. So when I'm doing my trainings, I talk about how I came to homeownership education. And it's a pretty simple story, and I won't give you the full version, but essentially it started at 24. I was just out of college. I had that just out of college debt. And so I thought to myself, what better way than to maybe invest? And so someone approached me with the idea of purchasing a home. This was the fall of 2007. And by the fall of 2008, I was getting messages, actual mail coming to my apartment complex, meaning I had never lived in the home. I had just purchased it, and it was already being rented out. Right? So I didn't really understand the logistics. I didn't include my parents when I made the decision, which is probably the biggest red flag that any one of us can attest to, is that we didn't talk to our parents first. And so I just signed on the dotted line for this house. And by fall of 2008, I started getting these mail notices from the mortgage provider telling me that I'm 30, 60, 90 days late. I'm calling the manager saying, or the management company saying, what's going on? And I'm not getting any answers. Then this thing called balloon payment and arm is adjusting. I don't know what an arm is, so whatever, I ignore it. And then come to find out basically I owe more than the home is worth. And I don't even know what to do. I'm just so lost in this process that I turned to my mom and my dad and I told them the truth. And from there, we had a long, very long talk about home ownership, what it really meant. We had to try to save the house. And then I learned along the way the importance of homeownership education and how I'd been taken advantage of, but also to my responsibility in that. And so when people talk about the housing crisis of 2008, it is super personal to me. And I think that this is why that energy will never end for me, because I know what the fear felt like when I was at home and I was getting these the mailings and I didn't know what they meant. And it was like another language to me. And so the resolution of this story is that obviously all ends well. And now I do this for a living and as my, passion. But I do think that the story itself lends to my credibility, that I too make mistakes, but that I know that home ownership is attainable. Now, later as an older adult, I do have another home of my own of my own choosing, and that I have, moved past some of the roadblocks that I had. And that's what we want. We want to show them, hey, there are credit issues. Trust me, those created that non-payment created credit issues for me. So just having that empathy, having that thing that they can empathize with me about is a good thing. We want to connect with our clients as best we can, and this is one way to do it. So second to that, I want to talk about proper packaging equals a safer delivery, right? We know that anytime we get an Amazon package, and they toss it out against the door, what's going to happen? It might break. We want to make sure it's still professional standards in writing. It still applies. I can't give you a presentation and keep my credibility up if I give you a presentation that has, just some errors in it, grammatical errors, et cetera, misspelled words. And I know that happens with the rush of writing. So we have to make sure we're paying attention to that. Avoid blurry pictures or pictures that are kind of, hard to see, mixed fonts. We have so much information, so much media coming at us, whether that's video, pictures, memes, GIFs, you name it. We have to kind of up our game with the imaging that we're putting on our slides because, our audience is used to that. Obviously, I'm not in a production studio. However, our audience, we're going to lose them if we don't make sure we have those types of things in our presentations. So what does it look like, right? What are the tools of the trade? You have your pre-training routine. I talked about that. And then we're going to go into room setup. We're going to talk about, hey, I don't see any faces. I have no one nodding, no one shaking their head. How do I know if I've lost you? We're going to talk about audio visual, right? Those tools that we have. And then watching the clock, right? So I know that I have about a half an hour or so left to this presentation, and I want to make sure I get to everything. And then deliverables. What can I give you so that you can go out and do the same? Room setup, it's exactly as it sounds. Before we were worried about round tables so that people could collaborate, or stadium style, because we had tribal council coming in. They needed to be able to, speak to folks in front of the room. The same exists in the middle of the pandemic. Now we're just wondering about devices. Webinar, is it a webinar? What does that mean? What about a meeting? What about a training? Are we using Zoom or Microsoft Teams, right? So some tribes have said they don't want to use Zoom, so they've moved to Microsoft Teams, which it works and functions similar, but we'd have to know that and plan for that. What about an agenda or a timeline, right? So this planning all is very important. And so let's talk a little bit about being a host versus a facilitator versus a trainer. Certainly you're in control, right? You're the host, you're the facilitator. You make sure that if there's a need for on camera, which for some trainings, you have to make sure that you're on camera in order to get the credit. But you have to disseminate that ahead of time. We call it in the trade, we call it the know before you go, right? Do they know that they're going to have their cameras on? Do they, or be on camera for the majority of the time? Do they know about any pre or post testing that's going to take place, right? Are they required to put things in the chat box? And or are you going to allow for folks to be to have access to other tools? When it comes to being a presenter and the slide content, you know, one of the things that we really want to avoid is not being in control, right? So, you know, that's that next slide. You might have heard it before. Hey, next slide. What does that mean? I would rather not have that take away from my presentation. And instead, I would go ahead and be the one to move my slides back and forth. And then chat and communication with attendees, right? We want to make sure that we're checking in. You saw me kind of check in to see if there were any questions so I don't miss anyone. You have to understand the power of people's names. So if I'm in, if for whatever reason you were checked out for a second, but I say, Anna, can I love your question. Thank you for asking. All of a sudden it's brought her back in because she's heard her name. You want to use that to your advantage when you're in this space where you're not going to necessarily see an actual reaction. And then audio controls. You know, the new question is to mute or not to mute. I think that when folks are going into a room, they should probably all be muted from that control perspective. However, there are times when you can go ahead and allow for them to unmute themselves as they speak, and you as the facilitator can control that. So we talked about Zooms, Teams, WebEx, Adobe Connect is another one. But then there's some informal ones, right? Everyone's used to FaceTime if you've got an iPhone, or WhatsApp for Android users, or some combination of the two. Also, Google Hangouts is another one. So, why tech is your friend is because our clients are already using it. They're using it in so many different ways that we have to just do it. Like there is no other way. So let's break into what this looks like for us. We know that in this curriculum, we want to, let's say, talk about pre and post testing, right? So with the group that I have in the room, and I'm gonna lean on Vicki for breaking us out here in a little bit, but just to kind of set this whole thing up, these bullet points here are where we want to go ahead and create pre and post test questions, right? And for the sake of time, we're going to focus on pre-test questions, right? What would you want? We want to get the group talking, interacting. I don't want to talk for an hour long straight. So Vicki's going to go ahead and break you out into groups of 3 or 4. And then what we're going to do is talk about that pre-test question. You'll notice in the breakouts, you're going to have that information available to you. You're going to have the guidelines, or whatever the description is of what we want done. So that way, if you forgot or you weren't paying attention, it's going to be also in your breakout session as well. And then lastly, from there, we're going to take you over to Jamboard, which I know you all are kind of familiar with. And so we'll talk about Jamboard, but first, let's go ahead and go into our breakout rooms.
Okay, so again, I'm just putting down what Marie would love for you all to do. I'm putting you into 4 breakout rooms, and each breakout room is titled Family Budget, Preparing a Family Budget. One is Credit Profile. Another one is Pitfalls of Predatory Lending and Preventing Foreclosure. And what Marie's asking you to do is to create as many test questionnaires, and we will put the link. I'm putting the link in the Jambox link, so everybody should have access to that. I'm putting that now in the chat box. So open that link, and then you can follow. Do you want to show the screen to see what they're going to see?
Sure.
And then before I release everybody.
Yep. So this is what you're going to see. You're going to go ahead and see family budget, improving credit, predatory lending, preventing foreclosure, and post-purchase maintenance. And you'll see here, I even gave you a freebie in each section.
Okay, I'm going to release the rooms. And Marie, don't accept your invitation.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll try not to.
All right, everyone, accept it. Okay, let me set my timer for 5 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Joanna, you're on mute.
Somebody added one to ours from outside of our group. Thank you, whoever that was.
What's funny because there was some healthy competition going on there. I seen that at first. It was like a little, team, what was it? Credit was kind of in the lead there. And then all of a sudden it exploded. Okay. And then there was some cheating because, who had Joanna? What team were you on?
We were preventing foreclosure. Why did we cheat?
Well, I know that there's someone who's got a credit counselor. Joanne, Vicky was telling me that there's someone
Oh,
from
Joanne, not me. Joanne. I'm Joanne.
Joanne.
Joanne, depending. Yeah, Joanne was
Yes.
a ringer. Joanne's a ringer.
So fun. That was fun. So I'm going to go ahead and show you kind of the back end just to kind of see and go through what everyone, put together. So here you can see that we've got family budget. So the pre-test questions that they would have talked about, right, is affordability. How much house can you actually buy, right? Do you know the difference between the wants versus the needs? Talking about your spending habits and all those good things. And you as the facilitator would go through that and expand and talk to your clients towards the end of each section saying, okay, hey, these are the pre-test questions that you guys came up with. Why would, what are the answers to these questions, and kind of walk them through that, improving credit. So what you have here, these are the types of questions you would want to see in this area as well, in terms of, what is showing on your actual credit. How satisfied are you with your credit score? I think that's a huge one, especially now that they can check their annual credit report more often, and than just the one time. With the pandemic, there are some changes to that. So do you know your credit score? And then also the naming the two types of credit. And of course, predatory lending, this is fun because I didn't actually know like how many people were going to be interested in that one as opposed to others. But we want to make sure that they're talking about balloon payments. What characterizes a lender that's as predatory, right? What's the difference between that and your institutional bank, for example? Have you ever had a payday lending loan? Because I think that a lot of times people don't see it for what it actually is. And so these are all great questions. Preventing foreclosure, right? So, talking about your mortgage provider in the sense that true or false, do you open those statements? Who do you contact if you cannot make your mortgage payment? That's a good one. Especially now that many times they're going to have to go to, non-traditional options, right? So going to the app, going to the, making the phone call, they're some of our members aren't necessarily as comfortable with that. So knowing is important. And then post-purchase, I've got lonely post-purchase with who is responsible for home repairs once you've signed a mortgage, right? Or why should I conduct a home inventory in terms of, insurance and protecting your assets and knowing what the contents of your home. So these were, really fun. And I think that having a layout like this was important. I'm sharing my screen right now, but I'm also going to go ahead and show you some other neat features and how I even, came to this layout. What I used, and if you haven't used it before, bear with me while I move this share screen out of my way. So I'm gonna move it down here. So Canva is a neat option, right? If you haven't heard of Canva, it's just a tool that you can use. People use it mostly for social media, right? So whether that's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you name it, they've just got templates on there that you can use. So, you go to social media and you can see all the different posts and opportunities. And there's a free version of Canva, so you don't have to pay for it. But certainly, the more creative you get, you might want to look into it. And so all I did was go to Canva. I put in Jamboard, as you can see me doing here, and all of these different templates popped up, right? All I did was go ahead and I'll show you what one would look like. So let's try this one. You would go to it it would give you options just like a PowerPoint presentation template would. And then you could go in here and own it. You could change it up. You could do whatever you want. When you're done, you would save it just like you would any other thing. You would save it. Here you can see that I can change it in terms of the type of file. So these are just neat things that you have to kind of poke around and play around with it, get creative, take the time to explore. I think that's, you know, as we create, and this is what I mean about making the content your own. This is another way that you can just explore. You don't have to give yourself that label of, I'm just not good with technology. You kind of have to play around with it. But once I had it saved, as you can see here, I'll even show you, it was just saved to my desktop like any other picture would be. Then I was able to throw it in both my presentation. So you all had that as the visual, right? And then you also, if I go back to it, you'll see here that then I was able to put it in the actual Jamboard. And how I did that was set as background. And Jamboard works like any other tool. So you upload the file just like you would a PDF, just like you would a policy or whatever it is you're trying to show. And then it would allow you that. So that's how I did it. And so here are some other neat ones that I've been able to do with using Canva. So going back to those types of learners, we talk about in these trainings how, you know, in the on-site world, what would we have done? We would have put maybe some toys or, you know, pipe cleaners on the table and things that they could, you know, if they're a tactile learner, if they're an audio-visual learner, right? And so just having those visuals, those colors, in this case, having just that little bit of movement in the screen brings the clients back to us. Something different, you know, here's a planning template that I saw, and it was good. I don't know, for my eyes, sometimes, you know, we're constantly seeing things with that white background. I thought, how neat if I could just, you know, toss in something new. And then lastly, QR codes. So QR codes have been around for a while, but I do think that they kind of had a bad rap because why not just copy and paste the link, right? And so for a while, people weren't using it, but now everything is contactless, right? How often do you go to a restaurant and if you do go out and notice that they're telling you we don't have menus, just, you know, just take a picture of the QR code or just snap the QR code and it'll take you to our menu. And so for those of you who are tech savvy and you do have a QR code reader, you know, use the screen right now. Go ahead and if you're not using your laptop, you can go ahead and use your phone to snap a quick look at this QR code and you'll see where it takes you. And so real quick, I'll allow you guys to do that while I move into the next, go back to my PowerPoint presentation. But Vicky, do you see anything in the chat area or any questions?
No.
Okay. So if you have done the QR code, you'll see that it took you directly to this link. And this is an actual video that I would use if I was in the Tribal Leadership Handbook. So it just goes to show you, yes, I've been given that content, that curriculum. Yes, I was given that information by the creators of it, right? However, I have to make it my own. I have to figure out a way to get these my audience to engage. And if they're visual learners, then this video is going to help them out, one. And two, it's a BOGO. I don't have to talk while it's on. That's 11 minutes that I can stay quiet, I can drink some water, and I can rest as the presenter. So it's a win-win, and it's why I bring it up. So I'm going to take this off and we'll head over back to my presentation. Again, if you have any questions, if I'm going too fast, just go ahead and let me know.
There is a question about how do you create the QR codes like that? And
Sure.
And just to confirm that the Canva templates are in free versions. And I just responded yes, because I use Canva a lot.
Cool. So with the QR code, depending on your, and now again, talk about the 80 and 80-20. So this is the part where I'm going kind of off the grid, right? So hopefully nothing inappropriate comes up. But you have a couple options. You can do like a QR code creator. And Google has a version of it. I know if I go to certain websites, like you see here to the right, it says create QR code for this page. So I didn't even have to go to another page before it tried to ask me if I wanted one. And that's actually within this Google Chrome, which is the browser that I'm using, the web browser that I'm using. And so that's kind of how I do it, because it's a quick and easy way to pick it up. But then if you're in YouTube, for example, and let me make sure I don't, where's my notes? When I'm in my notepad, right? And I'm looking for, I might go ahead and put that link in there and then go look for the QR code just to make sure I don't lose it, because oftentimes you're going back and forth. So in this case, right, here are all my, this is like the back end. I'm showing you what I did to make sure that I have everything I need. And so I have the cat clip, I have the Jamboard, and I have the lending in there, that actual website, just in case I get lost, right? And I would go ahead and put that in there. And then when it takes me back to this area, I kind of have to wait for it to load. I just want to make sure it doesn't play. When I go to share, it'll say like, how do you want to share it? And then when I put this link back in the chat area, excuse me, not the chat area, but in the actual web browser, then I can create the QR code from there. And you see, there it is. So that's how I did that. And again, for those, if it's not something, you don't want to take your audience away from your presentation, but if it's a break and you're saying, hey guys, I want you to watch this video, we're going to go on break, I want you to watch this video, and then our break will start, right? That gives them an opportunity to kind of, move out of the space that they're in, go get their water, watch the video, and then come back to you prepared and ready to go. So that's kind of how I would do it, or how I've done it in the past and used it to help. And you kind of have to talk these things out with, someone else in your office sometimes, because you don't know whether or not it's going to go over well. So, it's good whenever you can get that kind of feedback from folks on your staff, for example. So again, links for presentation materials. I showed you the back end. I showed you kind of the videos that I used, but also where I kind of keep a running list of things. And then external training tools. Obviously for smaller events like this, I couldn't continuously take you outside of my presentation. That would be too distracting. But for those longer presentations, those trainings that you have to do with your clients, then yeah, I would look at using external training tools. What do I mean by that? Well, first, let me go into your meetings, right? Make sure your meetings always have an agenda or the ability to collaborate, brainstorm, chat, breakout rooms. Those are going to be, that's your meat and your potatoes to a meeting, right? You always want to make sure you have those things, those options as far as the facilitation of the meeting itself. But then when you're in a webinar, that's a little different, right? There's usually only one speaker in a webinar, maybe two, but you have training descriptions and objectives. It's succinct. It's an hour and a half at most. And then, so you're the one who's giving out the primary information, and you might have a facilitator, but not always. And then you want to make sure that it's engaging those external things, but not distracting. So you don't want to lose them. And then breakouts are helpful to fostering those kind of conversations that we want you all to have, especially if you don't know each other, or there's that networking that we want to do. We want to say good morning. We want to have, hey, how are the kids? We want to have those interactions we would have normally had in pre-pandemic environments. But then trainings, right? This is where you can deliver a large amount of content over time. So this is where you want to make sure that you're creating those teach back moments, right? What we did with Jamboard, internal platform features. This is where you can pull out the bells and whistles and use the things from Zoom on the back end, like polls. You want to break into groups because, again, you don't want to become white noise where people can check out. And then consider at least 2 trainers because it's a lot. You're managing a lot of information. This is about multitasking. And so knowing that you have to have that much going on, you want to try to have at least 2 eyes on it. That doesn't mean that I disengage and I say, Vicky, next slide, please, like a diva. No, I want to be engaged. I want to make sure that I'm present when I need to be. But I do think that having 2 is very helpful. And I'm very thankful for Vicky's assistance. External engagement partners, we talked a lot about Jamboard because I know you guys are familiar with that. But there's also just changing the vibe, right? So using music, that's Spotify. If you're not familiar with the circle there, you can put music on. You can use Mentimeter, which is like another interactive polls in real time. Certainly you could use the polls that come from Zoom or whatever platform you're on. Timers, right? That sets my expectation. Vicky was very clear to tell you how much time you had left. Kahoot, that's friendly competition. You guys everyone likes a little bit of competition. So Kahoot is another neat one. I know you guys are going to have your webinar talking about things that are helpful to know in the future, that you're also going to have a training that talks about these things more in depth. But I just think it's great that we can bring it up here as well. Video, making sure that you create that time for unique space and storytelling for those visual and auditory learners, right? Those folks that need to have that stimulus coming from different places. And then Canva, we talked about. So, have fun, but remember the mission. So this is a meme talking about the Brady Bunch, and they've been Zooming since 1969. And so for those of you who know the Brady Bunch, then it's not foreign to you. However, you have to feel comfortable. You have to want to be able to just prep the room with your collaborators and use tools like the polling, the Q&A, the chat, raising hands, because you're not going to have eyes. You're not going to have hands. I tend to try to keep my hands underneath whatever desk I'm at because I don't want to seem like, it's flailing. Movement, voice, tone, and energy. These are all the things that you're going to have to use to your advantage because you don't have that in-person communication that you normally would. Presentations on deliverables. I will just say they make the worst handouts. Presentations as far as PowerPoints can sometimes not be as effective. So share content, but in smaller increments, right? You can't have a bunch of words on the screen. Less is always more. Spend time talking about your frequently asked questions. So, what are the things people are going to have questions about? I always know that I'm going to have to talk about credit and what their cousin did to their brother and or how IHS put something on their medical, I just know that I'm going to need credit is going to be a discussion that I think you're going to make sure you build out enough time for it, right? But I don't just poll just because. There has to be value in the results. So making sure you do that as well. And so with audio, this is an example, right? If I was talking about multi-generational anything, I would want to bring up songs, right? Because it takes you back to a time, a place. So I do name that tune with my Zoom folks. And we talk about hey, before we get started, everyone's going to have a way that they bring who they are to the table as far as their generation is concerned. And then that way, by using music, I can bring all of these things out of them. So with visuals and with audio, images and clips, these are just the neat way that you can bring kind of a holistic approach, right? None of my images take away from one another. They kind of all, move in one direction. And so beware of your time, right? I know that my time here is almost ending. I want to make sure I plan and I practice, and I acknowledge anyone who's engaging with me, right? So at this point in time, I just kind of want to give you all time to give me some more questions in the chat area. But what about those tough questions? You want to use this method. This is something that I do. I thank whoever asked the question. I might say, hey, Vicky, thank you for the question. Just so I understand, are you asking about the credit score or the credit report, right? So I'm going to repeat the question and make sure I understand where she's coming from. It might have also bought me some time, right? So maybe I didn't know. I couldn't really remember. Again, you've got a lot going on as being the facilitator. So sometimes you're just trying to make sure that it comes from the back of your mind to the front. And then I answer the question as best I can, of course. And I check for satisfaction. Hey, Vicky, did I answer your question? And then I thank them again. Hey, thank you for that question. If you guys have other questions, I'll wait till the end of the chat. That way I'm still in control of the conversation. And you kind of have to be. I think that on some level, there's always going to be someone in the room that might know more than you on any given subject, but you have to own your content, know and value who you are and what you bring. What's your truth? Bring that to the table, because you will have different presentation styles between you and your staff, right? But what about when, you have a bunch of folks that are in different technical levels mixed in together? How do you handle that? I bring them in. I make friends with the folks that might know more than me. And I say, hey, let me ask you a question. In the middle of the room, I'm bringing them in. I'm folding their knowledge base in. And I'm saying, you know what? I might know things, but together we're even stronger. When I'm in those groups and I'm invited to places where there's folks like Joanne or Joanna in the room, I'm going to bring them both to the table and say, I know you guys, have experienced this. Can you talk about this for us? And that way they're not just sitting there with their hands folded as they would be in class. I bring them in so they feel valued when that's the case. When you start late or you end early, these are things that can happen. You kind of just have to flow with it. And when technology doesn't cooperate, you keep it moving. I think just to kind of end here, I would say that the presentation must go on. So if you can't answer a question, you just listen, hey, I understand where you're coming from. Maybe there's some disagreement with what you've said, but you land on your truth, right? You land on what you know, and what you don't know, you say that you'll find out, or let's find out together. Or, you know what? I don't know, but Eastern Woodlands ONAP is one call away. I will find out for us. And, you just kind of throw it out there and say that and they value you at this point. They trust you. So do they think you're going to make the phone call? Yeah, they do. And that's kind of how you move forward. And so you be assertive with the presentation because it has to go on. It has to end at some point. Evaluate what works, right? At the end of this presentation, you all are going to get an evaluation of me and my content. You want to evaluate, I want to know what works. At first, if I'm honest, in the beginning, it was a little nerve-wracking, right? What are they going to say about me? But now I've gotten to the point where I have to value how important it is and how much I've improved because of that information. If I didn't have it, I wouldn't have gotten any better at it. So what works, what doesn't work, and how can I improve? Those are the questions you should ask yourself. Was the presenter's content useful? Ask that to your audience. What will you do with the information now that you've learned it today? What training logistics, such as the length of time? Maybe this is one of those things where you say, I really wish I had an hour and a half instead of an hour. Hint, hint. Open comment for training improvement, right? So just give them the reins. Don't make everything, A, B, or C, but kind of give an open comments section so that way they can add what they want. You take the good, you leave the bad. It's just like comments on social media. You can't please everyone, but you do want to know where you can improve. And so I'm going to leave you with my workspace because I felt like to be my authentic self, you kind of had to know what I had going on. And so I have a picture of my mom and my grandma, right? Because they kind of like anchor me. They keep me that, I know that they would have thought this presentation was amazing, right? So I always kind of keep them close by. And then gifts of gratitude, things that I've gotten from others that, thanking me for the presentations that I have delivered. It gives me a chance to say, okay, I've done this before and I can do it again. Sticky notes with answers, right? So if, let's say nobody had put anything in that Jamboard, I'd have to have some answers ready for you. So, I know everything, but I'm also facilitating and I've got a lot on my plate. I've got things in my sticky note pad and all this other stuff. So I put notes with answers on there just in case. I tried to maintain my energy. So I have water and popcorn because, girl gets hungry every once in a while. and then a bottle cap or paper clip. And this is kind of my personal thing that I do. There's a lot of energy that you have to have with these presentations. And so oftentimes I kind of like hold on to one, with in one hand. So again, this kind of goes back to controlling my hands and making sure I'm not flailing or using too many hand gestures. Because with audio and with visual, that might mess up my message, right? So I'm definitely a person who likes to use their hands when I speak. And so holding a bottle cap or a paper clip, man, by the time the presentation's done, I've snapped that paper clip in half with the energy that I've brought with me. But it does help to kind of focus and give some of that energy, excess energy off. And so that way I can be as clear in giving you the content as I can. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and I lied. So surveys and apps, just real quick, Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, those are good options as far as collecting that feedback that I talked about. But I do want to thank you again for your time. I appreciate just the honor to be here and spend time with you on this topic. So Vicki, I'm going to go ahead and toss it back over to you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. That's very, very helpful. We all can give Marie a round of applause. Thank you for that. And I know we should have given you an hour and a half, right? So I know that folks probably have a hard stop and they're transitioning, but if those who want to stay back, if you have any questions, now's the time. No? Thank you so much, Marie. It was really helpful. I even learned a couple of tips. So we just want to, Anna, did you want to have any closing remarks before we close out our session?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for everybody that was participating and for all being on here. And I enjoyed the Jamboard session. That's something I learned too. I could use that. I mean, I've been using Jamboard, but just the other ways and different ways to utilize it. And then just an idea of what we did with the exercise is just an idea that we could do with our class too, gathering data and information. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're more than welcome.
And Vicki, we're gonna share the slide deck and the PowerPoint. I mean, I'm sorry, the recording.